My name is Margaret Wilson, and I'm 68 years old. For most of my life, I thought I understood what family meant. I believed in loyalty, in sacrifice, in the bonds that tie us together through good times and bad. I believed in my daughter. I've been divorced for 23 years now. My ex-husband, James, left me for his secretary when our daughter, Olivia, was only 15. It was the classic cliché, but that didn't make it hurt any less. He moved to California with his new wife, sent child support checks that barely covered groceries, and called Olivia on her birthday if he remembered. And just like that, I became both mother and father to our teenage daughter. I worked 2 jobs, teaching elementary school during the day and waitressing at night to make sure Olivia had everything she needed: dance lessons, college prep courses, the prom dress she had her heart set on. When she got accepted to State University, I took out a second mortgage on our modest home to help pay for it. I didn't want her starting life with crushing student debt like so many young people these days. "Mom, you don't have to do this," Olivia had said when I told her about the loan. We were sitting at our kitchen table, the acceptance letter displayed proudly on the refrigerator behind us. "Yes, I do," I replied, reaching across to squeeze her hand. "This is your future we're talking about. I'll be fine." And I was fine. I picked up weekend shifts at the restaurant, cut back on everything except the occasional coffee with my friend Beth, and made those mortgage payments faithfully every month. When Olivia graduated with honors in business administration, the pride I felt watching her cross that stage made every sacrifice worthwhile. After college, Olivia married Tyler, a charming young man she met during her senior year. He worked in finance and had ambitious plans. I wasn't entirely sold on him at first. Something about his smile never quite reached his eyes, but Olivia seemed happy, and that was what mattered to me. They moved to the city, bought a small apartment, and started building their life together. I continued teaching, eventually becoming head of the English department at Jefferson Elementary. My house was too big for just me, but it held too many memories to part with. Olivia learning to ride her bike in the driveway, her graduation, party in the backyard, quiet evenings reading together on the porch swing. 5 years into their marriage, Olivia called me with exciting news. They were expecting a baby, my first grandchild. I cried happy tears and immediately started planning what I would knit for the nursery. "We need a bigger place, Mom," Olivia told me during one of our Sunday calls. "The apartment is barely enough for the 2 of us. With a baby coming..." She let the thought trail off. "Have you started looking?" I asked, already mentally calculating what I could spare to help them with a down payment. "We have, but everything in a good school district is so expensive. Tyler says we should wait a few years, but I don't want to raise our child in that tiny apartment." I heard the frustration in her voice, the same determination she'd had since she was a little girl. When Olivia set her mind on something, there was no changing it. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about Olivia, about the baby, about the future stretching out before us all. By morning, I had made my decision. 2 weeks later, I invited Olivia and Tyler over for dinner. After we'd finished eating, I handed Olivia an envelope. "What's this?" she asked, looking puzzled. "Open it," I said, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. Inside was the deed to my house, with her name added, alongside mine. Olivia's eyes widened as she realized what she was looking at. "Mom, no. This is your home." "It's our home," I corrected her. "And now it can be your child's home too." "I'm getting older, sweetheart. This place is too big for me to manage alone. I thought we could live here together. You, Tyler, the baby, and me. I could help with child care, and when I'm no longer able to take care of myself, you'll be right here." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. She got up from her chair and threw her arms around me, her pregnant belly pressing against my side. "This is too much," she whispered. "It's exactly enough," I assured her. "It's what family does." Tyler was unusually quiet during this exchange. But when Olivia looked at him questioningly, he managed to smile and raised his glass. "To Margaret," he said. "The most generous mother-in-law a guy could ask for." We clinked glasses and I felt a warmth spread through me. This was the right decision. I was giving Olivia and her family a stable home and securing my own future. A win for everyone. The next few months were a whirlwind of activity. Olivia took charge of renovating the house, turning the spare bedroom into a nursery and updating the kitchen that hadn't been touched since the 90s. I suggested we convert the den into a separate apartment for me, with my own small kitchen, bedroom and bathroom to give them privacy as a young family. "That's a great idea, Mom," Olivia agreed enthusiastically. "We'll still be together, but you'll have your own space. I used most of my savings to fund these renovations, telling myself it was an investment in our shared future." Tyler seemed particularly interested in the financial aspects, frequently asking about the value of the house and the equity I had built up over 30 years of ownership. "Just making sure we're maximizing the asset," he explained when I questioned his interest. "With the baby coming, we need to be financially strategic." I nodded as if I understood, though something about the conversation left me uneasy. 3 weeks before her due date, Olivia went into early labor. Little Jonathan came into the world small but healthy, with his mother's dark hair and what I swore was my father's chin. The moment I held him, a love so fierce it took my breath away washed over me. This tiny person was part of me, a continuation of our family story. The first few months with Jonathan at home were exhausting but wonderful. I took an early retirement package from the school to help care for him while Olivia recovered from the delivery, and Tyler continued working long hours at the investment firm. My little apartment within the house proved perfect, close enough to help with midnight feedings, but private enough to retreat when I needed rest. As Jonathan grew from an infant into a toddler, I noticed subtle changes in the family dynamic. Tyler started coming home later and later. He and Olivia argued in hushed tones behind closed doors. She seemed increasingly stressed, often snapping at small inconveniences. When I asked if everything was all right, she would force a smile and blame it on sleep deprivation or work pressure. One evening when Tyler was working late, again, Olivia broke down over dinner. "His firm is struggling," she admitted, wiping away tears. "Some investments went badly. We might have to make some changes." "What kind of changes?" I asked, immediately concerned. She hesitated. "Financial ones. Nothing for you to worry about. We'll figure it out." But I did worry. I worried when Tyler started suggesting they leverage the house to invest in a new opportunity. I worried when Olivia began asking detailed questions about the deed and ownership structure. Most of all, I worried when they started having friends over, wealthy-looking couples who surveyed the property with speculative eyes. "Mom," Olivia said one Sunday morning as we watched Jonathan playing in the yard, "what would you think about moving?" "Moving," I repeated, confused. "This is our home. We renovated it specifically so we could all live together." "I know, but hear me out. This neighborhood isn't what it used to be. The schools aren't as good as they once were. And this house, it's older, needs constant maintenance." I looked around at the home I'd lived in for over 3 decades. True, it wasn't the newest or the grandest, but it was solid. We just spent a small fortune making it even better. "We found this amazing place in Meadowbrook Estates," she continued, not waiting for my response. "It's a new development with top-rated schools, a community pool, walking trails, everything we could want. And there's a beautiful guest house on the property, even nicer than your apartment here." My heart sank. "Meadowbrook Estates? That's nearly an hour away." 40 minutes, she corrected. "And it's worth the drive. Tyler has been talking to a developer there who's willing to give us an incredible deal if we move quickly." "How would we afford something like that?" I asked. though I already suspected the answer. Well, Olivia hesitated. We'd need to sell this house. With the current market and all the improvements we've made, we could get enough for a down payment on the new place. Sell? The word felt like a physical blow. But we agreed this would be our family home, where I'd grow old with all of you around me. And we'll still be around you, just in a better location. Think about Jonathan. Don't you want him to have the best opportunities? She was using my grandson as leverage, and we both knew it. Of course, I wanted the best for him. But something about this whole situation felt wrong. I need time to think about it, I said finally. Olivia didn't press further that day, but the subject came up repeatedly over the next few weeks. Tyler joined the campaign, showing me glossy brochures of Meadowbrook Estates and describing the guest house in enticing detail. Jonathan would have a backyard 3 times the size of our current one. The master bedroom had a spa-like bathroom. The kitchen featured top-of-the-line appliances. And the guest house has its own garden, Tyler emphasized. You love gardening. Margaret, I did love gardening. But I loved the roses I'd nurtured for 20 years in this garden more. Still, I could feel myself weakening under their persistent pressure. When they arranged for us to visit the development one weekend, I agreed to go, telling myself I was just looking, not committing to anything. Meadowbrook Estates was undeniably beautiful, with its manicured lawns and coordinated architecture. The house they showed me was spacious and bright, all clean lines and modern conveniences. The guest house, while smaller than they'd described, was indeed charming, with a bedroom, sitting area, and compact kitchen. Can you see yourself here, Mom? Olivia asked. Her arm linked through mine as we toured the property. Jonathan ran ahead of us, delighted by the open space. I could see it, yes, but it didn't feel like home. It felt like a page from a magazine, pretty but impersonal. It's lovely, I said non-committally. The developer needs an answer by next week, Tyler mentioned casually as we drove home. Other buyers are interested, but he's giving us priority because of my connection with his firm. The pressure was mounting. Every conversation circled back to the move, to how much better life would be at Meadowbrook, to how I was the only thing standing in the way of their dream home. I began to feel like the villain in their story. One night, after Jonathan was asleep, Olivia sat down beside me on the porch swing, the very spot where I'd read her bedtime stories as a child. Mom, she said softly, I need you to trust me. This move is what's best for all of us, especially you. As you get older, you'll need more support. The guest house is all on one level, no stairs to navigate. There's a community center with activities for seniors. You could make new friends instead of sitting here alone most days. Her words stung. Was that how she saw me? A lonely old woman in need of activities to fill her empty days? I have friends here, I protested. Beth lives just down the street. The library where I volunteer is within walking distance. My doctor's office is 10 minutes away. And we'll find you new places, new doctors, new routines, she countered. Change is hard, I know, but sometimes it's necessary. I looked into my daughter's eyes, searching for the little girl who once promised she'd live with me forever, who cried when I went on business trips, who crawled into my bed during thunderstorms. That girl was long gone, replaced by a woman with dreams and ambitions of her own. Was I being selfish by standing in her way? Let me sleep on it, I said finally. That night I lay awake for hours, torn between my attachment to my home and my desire to support my daughter. In the morning, bleary-eyed but resolved, I made my decision. I'll sign the papers, I told her, over coffee. If this is what you truly believe is best for your family, then I trust you. Olivia's face lit up with relief and excitement. She hugged me tightly, thanking me over and over. You won't regret this, she promised. We're going to be so happy there, all of us together. The next few weeks passed in a blur of paperwork, packing, and preparations. I signed dozens of documents, not always understanding the legal terminology, but trusting that Olivia and Tyler had my best interests at heart. The deed was transferred, the house was put on the market, and a sale was finalized with surprising speed. On moving day, I stood in my empty bedroom saying a silent goodbye to the home that had sheltered me through marriage, motherhood, divorce, and beyond. The walls held echoes of laughter and tears, of Christmas mornings and birthday celebrations, of quiet nights and busy days. But homes, I reminded myself, aren't about walls and roofs. They're about the people we share them with. The moving truck, headed to Meadowbrook Estates, was packed with our combined belongings. Olivia had insisted I bring only what would fit comfortably in the guest house. So much of my furniture was sold or donated. My life was being downsized, wrapped in bubble wrap, and labeled with color-coded stickers. "Ready, Mom?" Olivia called, from downstairs. "Ready," I answered, taking one last look before closing the bedroom door behind me. We drove to Meadowbrook in separate cars, Tyler and Olivia with Jonathan in their SUV, me following in my aging sedan. As we pulled into the development, something felt off. The model home we'd visited was at the entrance, but Olivia led our little convoy deeper into the maze of streets, finally stopping in front of a house that looked nothing like the one we'd toured. This house was older, smaller, and significantly less grand than the showcase property. The yard was overgrown, the paint peeling in places. There was no guest house visible from the street. "There must be some mistake," I said as I got out of my car. "This isn't the house we saw." Tyler and Olivia exchanged a glance that sent a chill down my spine. "Mom," Olivia began, her voice unnaturally composed, "there's been a slight change of plans. The other house fell through at the last minute, financing issues, but this one is actually much better for our needs." "Our needs?" I repeated, looking from her to the shabby house and back again. "The guest house is in the back," Tyler added quickly. "It's charming, very rustic." I walked around the side of the house, my stomach nodding with each step. In the backyard stood what could only generously be called a cottage, a small, weathered structure that appeared to have once been a tool shed before someone added windows and a door. "This is where I'm supposed to live?" I asked, unable to keep the shock from my voice. "It's temporary," Olivia assured me, though something in her eyes suggested otherwise. "Just until we can find something better. The market is so competitive." Right now, I wanted to believe her. God help me, I needed to believe her. So I nodded and helped unload the few boxes labeled for the guest house. My clothing, some kitchenware, my most treasured books and photographs. The inside of the cottage was as disappointing as the exterior suggested. One room served as kitchen, living room and dining area. A doorway led to a minuscule bedroom barely large enough for my twin bed. The bathroom was functional but outdated, with a shower stall so small I bumped my elbows when I washed my hair. "We'll get you settled and then grab some dinner," Tyler said, depositing the last of my boxes on the particle board coffee table. "The moving truck with our stuff will be here tomorrow." Our stuff, not my stuff. The distinction was subtle but clear. That night, after a tense dinner where conversation focused exclusively on the main house's potential, I lay on my unfamiliar bed in my unfamiliar room and tried to make sense of what was happening. Had I misunderstood the arrangement? Had there truly been a last-minute change? Or had I been deliberately misled? In the morning, I walked to the main house for breakfast, hoping to spend time with Jonathan. The door was locked. I knocked, and after a long moment, Tyler answered in his pajamas. "Sorry, Margaret," he said without appearing particularly sorry. "We were sleeping in. It was a long day yesterday." "I just thought I'd see if Jonathan wanted breakfast with his grandma," I explained. Still sleeping too. Why don't you come back around lunchtime? The door closed before I could respond. I returned to my cottage and made a cup of instant coffee, the only kind that would fit in the tiny cabinet above my 2-burner stove. As I sipped the bitter liquid, I looked out the single window at the main house. The curtains moved slightly. Someone was watching me. Lunchtime came and went without an invitation. When I finally walked back to the house at 2 o'clock, Olivia answered, Jonathan balanced on her hip. "Oh, Mom," she said, sounding flustered. "We actually just had lunch. I should have texted you." "That's all right," I said, reaching for my grandson. He came to me willingly, his small arms wrapping around my neck in a hug that nearly brought me to tears. At least he hadn't changed. "We're planning to repaint this week," Olivia explained as she led me into a living room cluttered with half-unpacked boxes. The previous owners had terrible taste. I nodded, not mentioning that she had barely let me see the house before shutting me away in the cottage. "Can I help?" "No need," Tyler called from somewhere upstairs. "We've got professionals coming." Professionals? They could somehow afford, after claiming financial issues had forced them to switch houses. Another piece that didn't fit in this increasingly confusing puzzle. I spent an hour playing with Jonathan before Olivia mentioned they had errands to run. "We'll drop by your place later if we have time," she promised as she ushered me toward the door. They didn't have time, apparently. Nor did they have time the next day or the day after that. A pattern quickly established itself. I was welcome in the main house only during prescribed hours, usually when Tyler was at work. My invitations to have them visit my cottage were accepted but never acted upon. Jonathan was the bright spot in my days, his innocent affection a balm to my growing sense of isolation. 1 week stretched into 2, then 3. A month passed in this strange limbo. The temporary nature of my accommodation was never mentioned. Again. When I brought it up to Olivia during one of my brief visits, she changed the subject so smoothly I almost didn't notice. My attempts to integrate into the community were frustrating. Without a car, mine had mysteriously developed engine trouble shortly after our move and was deemed not worth fixing by the mechanic Tyler recommended. I was essentially stranded. The nearest bus stop was a mile away, along roads with no sidewalks. My social circle had been reduced to occasional phone calls with Beth and weekly video chats with my sister in Florida. It was during one of these calls with my sister Kate that the truth began to crystallize for me. "How's the new place?" she asked. "Send me some pictures." "I don't have many pictures," I admitted. "Just of my little cottage." "Cottage? I thought you were living in a guest house attached to Olivia's new home." "That was the plan, but there was a last-minute change. The house we originally looked at fell through." Kate frowned through the screen. "That's strange. On Facebook, Olivia's been posting pictures of a beautiful new house. Looks exactly like what you described to me before the move." My blood ran cold. "What? Hold on, I'll find it." Kate scrolled through her phone. "Here. She posted this 3 days ago. Dreams do come true. So blessed to give my family the home they deserve." She turned her phone toward her computer camera. Though the image was small and slightly blurry, I could clearly see the house, the exact house we had originally toured at Meadowbrook Estates. "That's impossible," I whispered. "We're living in a different house, a much smaller one with my cottage out back." "Margaret," Kate said slowly, "something isn't right here. Have you actually seen the paperwork for this new arrangement? Do you know what happened to the money from selling your house?" I didn't. I had signed papers, yes, but in the rush and emotional turmoil of the move, I hadn't carefully reviewed them. I had trusted my daughter. "I need to go," I told Kate. "I'll call you back." That afternoon, when Olivia came to collect Jonathan after his nap with me, the one reliable time I got to spend with him each day, I confronted her. "Kate mentioned seeing pictures of your new house on Facebook," I said casually. "It looks beautiful." A flicker of alarm crossed Olivia's face before she composed herself. Oh, those are just aspirational posts. You know how social media is. Everyone pretends their life is perfect. The house in the pictures looks exactly like the one we toured at Meadowbrook Estates, the one that supposedly fell through. Mom, she sighed. Why are you doing this? We've all been making the best of a difficult situation. Tyler and I are working hard to give Jonathan a good life. Can't you just be supportive? Her deflection made my heart ache. This wasn't my daughter, not the girl I raised to be honest and direct. Something had changed her, warped her values. Or perhaps I had been blind to who she truly was all along. That night, I waited until the lights in the main house went out. Then, using the flashlight function on my phone, I made my way to the mailbox at the end of the driveway. Inside, among the catalogs and bills, I found a statement from Meadowbrook Estates Community Association. The amount due for quarterly homeowners' fees was listed alongside an address, not our current address, but one on Magnolia Lane, in the prestigious section of the development we had originally visited. My hands trembled as I returned to my cottage. Sleep was impossible. In the morning, gathering what little courage I had left, I called a taxi and gave the driver the address from the statement. 20 minutes later, we pulled up in front of the house from Olivia's Facebook posts. The house. We had toured the house that had supposedly fallen through. A moving truck was parked in the driveway, and workers were carrying furniture inside. Expensive furniture. New furniture. I paid the driver and walked up to one of the movers. "Excuse me, who lives here?" "Name's on the sheet," he replied, barely, glancing at me. Wilson Green. Wilson was my last name. Green was Tyler's. The world seemed to tilt beneath my feet. They had bought the house after all. They were moving in without me, while keeping me stashed away in that dilapidated cottage, isolated and dependent. The guest house I had been promised, the justification for selling my home of 30 years, likely never existed beyond the lies they had told me. As I stood there, shell-shocked and betrayed, the front door opened. Tyler stepped out, phone to his ear, gesturing instructions to the movers. When he saw me, he froze. "I have to go," he said into the phone. "Margaret, this is unexpected. Is it?" My voice sounded strange to my own ears, calm when I felt anything but. "I think you expected me to stay quietly in that shed while you spent my money on this." Tyler approached me, lowering his voice. "Let's not make a scene. Why don't we talk? About this later, when Olivia's home? Where is she? Shopping for furniture." At least he had the decency to look uncomfortable. "Look, things are complicated. The housing market, our finances—" "Don't," I interrupted. "Just don't. I trusted you both. I gave you everything I had. And we're taking care of you, aren't we? You have a place to live. You see Jonathan every day." "A place to live? That cottage is barely habitable. And I see my grandson when you allow it, which is less and less each week." Anger rose in me, burning away the shock. What happened? To the money from my house? The house I owned outright, that I put your names on because I believed we would live together as a family. Tyler's expression hardened. "That's a conversation for another time. I need to supervise this move." "Another time when? When you've completely moved in here and I have no way of finding you? When you've decided I've become too inconvenient to keep around at all?" A mover approached with a question about where to place a leather sectional. Tyler turned away from me, dismissing my presence entirely. I stood there, invisible, as the life that should have included me took shape around me. The beautiful home, the fresh start, the future I had been promised, built with the foundation of my sacrifice and trust. Something broke inside me then, not my heart, which had been breaking slowly for months, but whatever remained of my blind faith in my daughter. In that moment, I knew with absolute clarity that I had been deceived, manipulated, and discarded by the person I loved most in the world. I took one last look at the house that should have been our shared home, then turned and walked away. I had no plan, no clear direction. All I knew was that I couldn't go back to that cottage and continue pretending that everything was fine, that I hadn't just discovered the depth of my daughter's betrayal. As I reached the end of the street, I pulled out my phone and dialed the one person who had tried to warn me. "Kate," I said when my sister answered, "I need help." Kate's response was immediate and decisive. "Don't go back to that cottage. Take a taxi to the airport. I'm booking you a flight to Florida right now." "I can't just leave," I protested, though part of me desperately wanted to do exactly that. "Jonathan, we'll still be there when you figure this out," Kate finished firmly. "Right now you need to think about yourself for once. Can you get to the airport?" I checked my wallet. The taxi fare had taken most of my cash, but my credit card was still there. "Yes, I can make it." "Good. There's a flight at 2:15. I'll text you the details once I've booked it. Pack whatever essentials you can carry and get out of there before they realize what's happening." 3 hours later, I was sitting in an uncomfortable airport chair, waiting to board a plane to Tampa. I had returned to the cottage only long enough to grab my medication, a few changes of clothes, and my most important documents. My phone had been buzzing with calls from Olivia, likely alerted by Tyler about my unexpected appearance at their real house, but I let them go to voicemail. I wasn't ready to hear whatever lies she would tell next. As I sat there, surrounded by travelers with destinations and purposes, I felt utterly adrift. At 68, I was starting over with nothing but a small suitcase and a shattered trust in the person I had sacrificed everything for. The boarding announcement came as a relief. At least for the next few hours, I would be in motion, neither here nor there, suspended between the life I had lost and whatever awaited me in Florida. Kate was waiting at baggage claim, her familiar face now lined. With worry, she hugged me tightly, and I collapsed into her embrace, the emotional dam finally breaking. Right there amidst the luggage carousels and tired travelers, I sobbed like a child. "It's okay," she murmured, stroking my hair as she had when we were girls and I'd fallen off my bike or been teased at school. "I've got you now." Kate's condo was small but welcoming, with a spare bedroom that overlooked a community pool. That first night, after a quiet dinner where I could barely eat, she helped me settle in and then sat with me as I finally listened to Olivia's voicemails. "Mom, where are you?" Her voice was frantic. "Tyler said you showed up at... Look, there's been a misunderstanding. Call me back immediately." The second message. "Mom, this is ridiculous. You can't just disappear like this. We're worried sick. If you're trying to punish us, it's working. Please call." The third was more threatening. "If you don't call back within the hour, I'm reporting you missing to the police. You're not thinking clearly." The latest, from just an hour ago. "The police said since you took your things and there's no sign of foul play, they can't do anything." "Fine. When you're ready to act like an adult and talk about this, call me." "Act like an adult," I repeated incredulously. "After they stole my house and left me in a shed." Kate's expression darkened. "We need to get a lawyer, tomorrow." "A lawyer?" "Kate, I can't afford. I'll cover it initially. We'll figure it out." "But this isn't just a family squabble, Margaret. This is elder abuse and possibly fraud." The words hit me like physical blows. Elder abuse, fraud. Such ugly terms to describe what my own daughter had done to me. The next morning, after a restless night, Kate drove me to the office of Patricia Hernandez, an attorney specializing in elder law. Patricia was a no-nonsense woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a determined set to her jaw. "Tell me everything," she said after the introductions. "Start from when you first added your daughter's name to the deed." For the next hour, I recounted the whole sorry tale. The original agreement, the renovations, the pressure to move, the bait and switch with the houses, and finally my discovery of their deception. Patricia took detailed notes, occasionally interrupting to ask for clarification or specific dates. When I finished, she set down her pen and looked at me directly. "Mrs. Wilson, based on what you've told me, you have grounds for legal action against your daughter and son-in-law. The transfer of property appears to have been executed under false pretenses, and their subsequent actions suggest a deliberate intent to deceive you. I don't want to sue my daughter," I said automatically, though even as the words left my mouth, I questioned them. What exactly was I protecting at this point? "I understand," Patricia replied gently, "but you need to protect yourself. At minimum, we should seek the return of the proceeds from your house sale, which were apparently used to purchase a property you were explicitly excluded from." "Can she do that?" Kate asked. "It depends on the specific language in the transfer, documents, and what we can prove about the verbal agreements. I'll need copies of everything Mrs. Wilson signed. Can you get those?" I shook my head. "They're in the cottage, in a file box under my bed." "That's the first thing we need then," Patricia decided. "Do you have a friend who could retrieve them for you?" My mind went to Beth, my closest friend from back home. "Yes, but she doesn't have a key to the cottage." "Actually," Kate interjected, "that might be better. If she goes when Olivia or Tyler is home and explains that she's there to pick up some of your things, they might allow it rather than escalate the situation publicly." The plan was set in motion. I called Beth, who was horrified by my situation and immediately agreed to help. 2 days later, she texted to confirm she had retrieved my file box without incident. "Olivia seemed nervous," Beth reported when she called that evening. "Kept asking where you were, if you were okay. I just said you needed some time away and had asked me to get some of your papers. Oh, and Margaret, the cottage has been emptied. All your furniture is gone." A cold weight settled in my stomach. "Gone where?" "I don't know." When I asked, Olivia said they were storing it safely until you came to your senses. Her words, not mine. So they had erased even the minimal space they had allocated to me. The message was clear. Come back on our terms, or don't come back at all. Beth shipped the file box overnight, and the following afternoon, Patricia spread its contents across her conference table. Together, we sorted through decades of my financial, life, mortgage statements, insurance policies, tax returns, and finally the documents related to the property transfer. "Here's the problem," Patricia said, holding up a stack of papers. "These transfer documents are comprehensive and don't contain any conditions about your continued residence in the property. Legally, you gave them your house, free and clear." My heart sank. "So there's nothing we can do?" I didn't say that. Patricia flipped through the pages. "The issue isn't with these documents. It's with what happened afterward. You were induced to sell the property based on specific promises about your living arrangements. Those promises were broken. That's where we have leverage." She outlined a strategy. "Document everything about the original agreement, gather evidence of the false promises regarding Meadowbrook Estates, and prepare for either negotiation or litigation." "Won't this take months? Years?" I asked, overwhelmed by the prospect of a drawn-out legal battle. "Possibly. But sometimes the threat of legal action is enough, especially when the facts are as clear as they appear to be in your case. And there's something else." Patricia hesitated. "Given your age and the nature of their actions, we could potentially involve adult protective services. Elder financial abuse is taken very seriously. The thought of officially accusing my daughter of elder abuse made me physically ill. Despite everything, some part of me still wanted to protect her, to believe there was an explanation beyond simple greed and callousness. "Let's try the demand letter first," I said finally. "Give them a chance to make this right without going that far." Patricia nodded, though I could tell she had reservations about my reluctance. "I'll draft it. Today. In the meantime, don't respond to any communications from them without consulting me first." That evening, as Kate and I sat on her balcony watching the sunset, my phone lit up with a FaceTime call from an unknown number. I almost declined it until I heard a small voice from the speaker. Grandma? Grandma, can you see me? Jonathan. My heart lurched. I answered immediately, and his little face filled the screen, too close to the camera in the way of young children who haven't mastered video calls. Hello, my love, I said, fighting back tears. I miss you so much. Miss you too. When you coming home? Mommy said you went on a trip. Before I could answer, the phone was taken from him, and Olivia's face appeared. She looked tired, her eyes ringed with shadows. Mom, she said, her voice clipped. Finally, where are you? I'm safe, I replied, deliberately vague. That's all. You need to know right now. Olivia's expression hardened. This is childish. You can't just run away because you're upset about the house situation. The house situation, I repeated, anger flaring. Is that what we're calling it? You lied to me, Olivia. You took my home, put me in a glorified shed, and bought yourselves a mansion with my money. That's not, she began, then stopped, recalibrating. Look, things didn't work out exactly as planned. The market changed. Opportunities arose. We were going to explain everything once we got settled. Explain what? How you justified stealing from your own mother? We didn't steal anything. Her voice rose. You signed those papers willingly. You agreed to the move. It's not our fault if you're having regrets now. Her complete lack of remorse stunned me. This was my daughter, the little girl I had raised to be kind and honest. What had happened to her? I'm not having this conversation, I said quietly. Not like this. My lawyer will be in touch. Lawyer? Alarm flashed across her face. Mom, you don't need a lawyer. We can work this out as a family. We stopped being a family the moment you decided I was disposable, I replied, and ended the call before she could respond. Kate, who had been silently witnessing this exchange, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. You did the right thing. Did I? Then why does it feel so terrible? Because you're a good mother who loves her daughter, even when she doesn't deserve it. The next week passed in a blur of legal consultations, document reviews, and emotional upheaval. Patricia drafted a demand letter outlining the deception and requesting the return of the proceeds from my house sale, approximately $420,000 based on county records of the transaction. Once they received this, they have 14 days to respond, she explained. If they ignore it or refuse, we'll file a civil complaint and potentially contact Adult Protective Services. The letter was sent by certified mail to ensure they couldn't claim they never received it. 3 days later, Olivia called again. A demand letter? Really, Mom? You're suing us. I'm asking for what's rightfully mine, I corrected her. Money that was taken under false pretenses. We didn't take anything. You gave us your house because you wanted to help with Jonathan. Because that's what family does, remember? Your words. Yes, on the condition that we would all live together, with me in a proper guest house, not stuffed away in a shed while you bought a luxury home with my money. There was a pause. When Olivia spoke again, her voice had softened. I know. You're hurt. I understand why you feel betrayed. But suing us isn't the answer. Come home. We'll figure something out. For a brief, weak moment, I almost considered it. The pull of family, of Jonathan especially, was strong. But then I remembered the cottage, the isolation, the lies. What exactly would we figure out? I asked. Would you sell the new house, return my money, or just find a slightly bigger shed to put me in? Mom, no, Olivia. This isn't about hurt feelings. It's about what's right. You know what you did. Fine, she snapped, all pretense of conciliation vanishing. Have it your way, but don't expect to see Jonathan during this ridiculous legal crusade of yours. The threat hit its mark perfectly. You would use my grandson as leverage? I'm protecting my child from a toxic situation. from a grandmother who would rather sue his parents than work things out. After we hung up, I sat on Kate's sofa, staring at nothing, hollowed out by the conversation. Using Jonathan as a weapon was a new low, even after everything else. Patricia advised filing the civil complaint immediately after hearing about Olivia's threat. "This is textbook emotional manipulation," she said. "They're hoping you'll drop everything to maintain access to your grandson. Don't let them use him as a pawn." Easier said than done when that pawn was the little boy I adored, who would not understand why his grandmother had suddenly disappeared from his life. The civil complaint was filed the following week. Patricia had compiled a compelling case, including affidavits from Beth and Kate about the original agreement and the conditions I had been living in at the cottage. The court assigned a hearing date 3 weeks out, relatively quick for such matters, according to Patricia. The judge assigned to the case has a strong record on elder abuse cases, she told me. That's in our favor. 2 days after the complaint was filed, I received a text from an unknown number. It was a photo of Jonathan, tearful and clutching a stuffed bear I had given him for his birthday. Below it was a message. "He keeps asking for you. Is this what you want?" I showed it to Patricia, who was furious. "This is blatant emotional blackmail. We're adding it to the complaint." The next day, a different tactic. Tyler called, his tone conciliatory. "Margaret, this has gone too far. We're family. Let's sit down and talk without lawyers, find a compromise." "What kind of compromise?" I asked cautiously. "We could arrange a regular visitation schedule with Jonathan. Maybe find you a nicer apartment nearby." "And the money from my house?" He hesitated. "We've already invested most of it in the new property, but we could work out some kind of payment plan maybe. A small monthly stipend." Small being the operative word, no doubt. "Not good enough, Tyler." "Don't be unreasonable," he said, an edge creeping into his voice. "You're not getting that money back in a lump sum. It's gone. The best you can hope for is some kind of ongoing support." "I'll take my chances with the court," I replied, and hung up. The day before the hearing, Patricia received a settlement offer from Olivia and Tyler's lawyer. They would pay me $100,000 immediately and provide a small monthly allowance for life. "It's inadequate," Patricia said bluntly. "Less than a quarter of what they took, with strings attached that would keep you dependent on their goodwill. I recommend rejecting it," I agreed. The lowball offer only confirmed that they knew their position was weak. The morning of the hearing, I dressed carefully in a conservative navy dress Kate had loaned me, my hands shaking as I fastened the pearl, earrings that had been a gift from my mother. I wanted to look dignified, composed, not like the fragile elderly woman they were trying to paint me as. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, more intimate. Olivia and Tyler sat at a table, with their attorney, a sleek man in an expensive suit who exuded confidence. Olivia wouldn't meet my eyes, but Tyler stared at me with barely concealed hostility. Judge Marian Abernathy, a stern-faced woman in her 60s, reviewed the filings before addressing the court. "This is a troubling case," she began. "Mrs. Wilson alleges that her daughter and son-in-law induced her to transfer her home to them and subsequently sell it under false pretenses, depriving her of both the property and the proceeds. The defendants claim the transfer was a gift with no conditions, and that any promises regarding living arrangements were informal and non-binding." She looked directly at Olivia. "Mrs. Green, did you promise your mother that she would live with your family in a proper guest house as part of this arrangement?" Olivia glanced at her attorney, who nodded slightly. "We discussed various living arrangements, Your Honor, but nothing was formally agreed upon." "That's not what I asked, Judge Geeker," Abernathy said sharply. "Did you promise your mother she would live with you in a guest house? Yes or no?" A tense silence fell over the courtroom. Finally, Olivia answered, "Yes, initially, but circumstances changed. What circumstances specifically? Financial ones. The housing market shifted. The property we originally wanted became complicated. Complicated, the judge repeated flatly. Yet you managed to purchase a home in the exact development you had originally shown your mother for a sum that approximates the proceeds from selling her house. A house, I'll note, that you would not have been able to sell without her adding your names to the deed in the first place. Olivia had no good answer for that. Her attorney jumped in with technical arguments about the voluntary nature of the property transfer, the lack of written conditions, and the statute of limitations on verbal agreements. Judge Abernathy let him finish before turning to me. Mrs. Wilson, why did you add your daughter and son-in-law's names to your property deed? I took a deep breath. Because I trusted them. Because we had agreed to live together as a family, with me helping care for my grandson and them eventually, caring for me as I aged. That was always the understanding. And did you receive any compensation for this transfer? No, Your Honor. It was meant to be a family arrangement, not a business transaction. The questioning continued for another hour, with Patricia methodically presenting evidence of the original agreement, the false promises about Meadowbrook Estates, and the substandard conditions of the cottage. By the time the judge called a recess to consider her ruling, I was emotionally drained but oddly peaceful. Whatever the outcome, I had stood up for myself. I had refused to be discarded and forgotten. When court resumed, Judge Abernathy delivered her decision without preamble. Having reviewed the evidence and testimony presented, I find that the defendants did indeed induce the plaintiff to transfer and subsequently sell her property under false pretenses. While the legal documents themselves may not have contained explicit conditions, the context and communications surrounding the transfer clearly establish a mutual understanding that was violated. She fixed Olivia and Tyler with a stern gaze. The law recognizes not just what is written on paper, but the principles of good faith and fair dealing. What happened here violates those principles. Therefore, I am ordering the defendants to repay the plaintiff the full amount of the proceeds from the sale of the original property, 420,000 talilos, within 30 days. A small gasp escaped me. Patricia squeezed my hand under the table. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am referring this matter to Adult Protective Services for review, as the evidence suggests potential elder financial abuse. The defendant's subsequent behavior, including the attempt to use access to the plaintiff's grandchild as leverage, only underscores the concerning nature of their actions. Tyler leaned over to whisper urgently to his attorney, who stood to object. Your Honor, my clients simply don't have $420,000 in liquid assets. The money was invested in their current home. Then they will need to obtain a home equity loan, sell the property, or find another source of funds, Judge Abernathy replied unsympathetically. The 30-day timeline stands. If they fail to comply, the court will consider additional remedies, including a lien on their property. With a decisive tap of her gavel, it was over. I had won. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Olivia approached me, tears streaming down her face. Are you happy now? She demanded. You've ruined us. We'll have to sell the house, maybe declare bankruptcy. I looked at my daughter, this stranger wearing her face, and felt a complex mix of sadness, anger, and surprising clarity. No, Olivia. You ruined us when you decided that a bigger house was worth more than your relationship with your mother. When you lied to me, isolated me, and used my grandson as a bargaining chip. I never meant, she began. It doesn't matter what you meant. It matters what you did. I straightened my shoulders. I loved you enough to give you everything I had. You loved me so little that you relegated me to a shed and erased me from your future. That's something you'll have to live with. Tyler appeared. Behind her, his face thunderous. This isn't over. Patricia stepped between us. Actually, it is. The judge's ruling was quite clear. I suggest you focus on arranging payment rather than making threats that could further complicate your situation." They left without another word, Olivia's shoulders shaking with sobs, Tyler's arm rigid around her waist. In the weeks that followed, the practical matters resolved themselves with surprising efficiency. Under threat of contempt of court, Olivia and Tyler obtained a home equity loan and paid the full amount as ordered. Patricia helped me find a comfortable apartment in Tampa, not far from Kate's condo, and introduced me to a financial advisor who assisted in setting up investments that would provide sustainable income. The emotional aftermath was messier, less definitive. Olivia made no attempt to contact me after the hearing, and I struggled with whether to reach out to her. The thought of never seeing Jonathan again was almost unbearable, but I couldn't bring myself to initiate contact after everything that had happened. Kate, sensing my unspoken grief, offered gentle advice. "Give it time. For now, focus on rebuilding your life. The rest will follow." I took her words to heart. I joined a book club at the local library, started volunteering at a literacy program for children, and even took a watercolor class at the community center. Slowly, I built a new routine, a new community, a new sense of purpose. The apartment began to feel like home, adorned with a few treasured possessions Beth had retrieved from storage and shipped to me, along with new items that reflected my current self rather than my past. 3 months after the hearing, my phone rang with Olivia's number. I almost didn't answer. Nearly 2 decades of teaching had taught me that some tests need to be retaken before they can be passed. But something compelled me to accept the call. "Mom?" Her voice was hesitant, almost timid. "It's me." "I know," I replied neutrally. I've been in therapy since the hearing. The judge was right about the APS referral. They investigated us. It was humiliating but necessary. She paused. "I'm beginning to understand what I did. Not just the legal wrong, but the betrayal." I said nothing, waiting. "I don't expect forgiveness," she continued. "Not yet, maybe not ever. But Jonathan misses you terribly. Would you be willing to talk to him? Just a video call to start?" My heart leaped at the thought, even as caution tempered my response. "I'd like that. But Olivia, I need to know this isn't another manipulation. I can't go through that again." "It's not," she promised, her voice breaking. "I'm trying to be better. To understand why I did what I did, why I let Tyler convince me that it was okay to treat you that way. It wasn't okay. None of it was okay." For the first time since this ordeal began, I heard genuine remorse in her words. Not the calculated contrition of someone caught, but the raw regret of someone confronting their own moral failure. "We can start with a call with Jonathan," I agreed. "We'll see where things go from there." That evening, I spoke with my grandson for the first time in months. His excited chatter about preschool, his new fish, and how he'd lost a tooth filled me with a joy I'd almost forgotten. When he asked when he could visit me in Florida, I glanced at Olivia, visible at the edge of the screen. "That's something your mom and I need to discuss," I told him. "But I hope it will be soon." After Jonathan was ushered off to bed, Olivia and I had our first real conversation since the hearing. She explained that they had indeed been forced to sell the Meadowbrook house, downsizing to a modest townhouse that they could actually afford. Tyler's firm had suffered additional financial setbacks, requiring him to take a lower-paying position with a different company. "He resents you," she admitted, "blames you for everything, even though it was our decisions that led here. That's one of the things I'm working on in therapy, seeing how I let his ambition override my conscience." "And your marriage?" I asked, not sure if I wanted to hear the answer. Strained. "But we're trying, for Jonathan's sake at least." We ended the call with a tentative plan for them to visit during Jonathan's spring break. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was a door left slightly ajar. a possibility of something new emerging from the ashes of what we had lost. In the meantime, I continued building my new life. I made friends, including a retired literature professor named Alan who shared my love of classic novels and jazz. I took a Mediterranean cruise with Kate, fulfilling a lifelong dream. I started writing a children's book inspired by stories I used to tell Olivia when she was small. When spring break arrived, I greeted Olivia and Jonathan at Tampa International with carefully measured expectations. Jonathan ran to me immediately, throwing his small arms around my waist with unrestrained joy. Olivia hung back, uncertain of her welcome, until I extended an arm to include her in the embrace. "Tyler didn't come?" I asked as we collected their luggage. "No," she replied, something unreadable in her expression. It's complicated right now." Over the next week, we navigated a new kind of relationship, one built on tentative trust rather than assumed obligation. We took Jonathan to the beach, to a children's museum, to a wildlife sanctuary, where he marveled at alligators and flamingos. In the evenings, after he went to sleep, Olivia and I really talked about the past, the present, and the possible future. On their last night in Florida, as Jonathan slept in the guest room of my apartment, Olivia handed me a thick envelope. "What's this?" I asked. "Open it." Inside was a formal letter from her therapist, confirming her ongoing treatment for issues related to boundary violations, codependency, and financial exploitation behaviors. Attached was a notarized document in which Olivia acknowledged her actions towards me, expressed remorse, and committed to a structured reconciliation process that included family therapy and transparent financial dealings. "I wanted you to have something concrete," she explained. "Something beyond just words. I'm serious about making amends, Mom. Not just for Jonathan's sake, but for both of us." I studied my daughter's face, the lines that hadn't been there a year ago, the new gravity in her eyes. She had changed. We both had. "It's a start," I said, placing the envelope on the coffee table. "A good start. 3 years have passed since that night. Olivia and Tyler eventually divorced, a decision that proved healthier for everyone involved. She moved to Tampa with Jonathan, renting an apartment a short drive from mine, close enough for regular visits, but with clear boundaries that we both now recognize as necessary. I've maintained my independence, continuing to live in my own apartment and pursuing my newfound interests. The children's book I wrote was published by a small press and has become a modest success. Alan and I have developed a relationship that brings warmth and companionship to both our lives. Kate remains my strongest advocate and dearest friend. Olivia has rebuilt her career in business consulting, more modest in scale, but more sustainable in practice. She's found a version of success that doesn't require exploiting others or compromising her values. Our relationship will never be what it once was. Too much was broken to fully restore it, but we've constructed something new from the fragments, something perhaps stronger in its acknowledgement of our capacity for both harm and healing. Jonathan, now 8, bounces between our homes with the resilience of childhood, unaware of the full story behind our family's reconfiguration. Someday, when he's older, we'll tell him a version of what happened, not to burden him with our mistakes, but to ensure he understands the importance of treating people with dignity, especially those who love you most. As for me, I've learned that family isn't simply about blood or obligation. It's about choices made daily, about respect earned and maintained, about love that holds firm even when tested. I've learned that it's never too late to stand up for yourself, to demand the dignity you deserve. And perhaps most importantly, I've learned that the end of one chapter doesn't mean the end of your story. There are still difficult days, moments when the betrayal feels fresh, when trust wavers, when the path forward seems uncertain. But those days grow fewer as time passes. What remains is a life rebuilt, different than I had planned, certainly, but ultimately richer for having been tested. My name is Margaret Wilson. I'm 71 years old, and I am the author of my own life.